It will be the conversation I had with Adaeze Sokan. She's one of the people who actually, went on the journey to getting the Nigeria Startup Bill to become an act from the ideation stage to the stage where, the president put the pen to paper. We'll be asking her about the journeys, what her hopes, expectations are, as well as the concerns by people that Nigeria is good with policy making, but implementation and sustainability is another concern. Adaeze will be telling us what she thinks about that.
Tech Hub, for a smarter you.
It is good news, and the whole of the startup industry in Nigeria is absolutely happy. The Nigeria Startup Bill is now an act officially. I mean, that sounds like a birthday gift, to startups in Nigeria. How does that make you feel as somebody who actually worked with startups?
I'm really excited. I mean, for the first time, I guess for the first time, we can see that government is really for the people, right? And it's a first in environment, getting government to play the part that they need to play so that we can unlock the potential of tech in really driving economic growth and development. So it's really good. I'm excited. Also because, I was part of the team that helped start the process for the act. So, I mean, this is something we started when we're just playing with ideas around the act. So to see it get to the point where it's become an act is really fulfilling and births so much hope for the ecosystem.
I mean, it's actually exhilarating, sincerely speaking, and I'm glad you mentioned that you were part of the team, specifically the Presidential Advisory Strategy Group. You're a member of that group. I mean, what was the journey like from when you guys were playing around with that ideas to when, to when he signed it?
This was a journey that started with everyone in mind, meaning the entire ecosystem was supposed to be part of this journey, and we're a part of this journey. So we started off, we always knew we wanted to have an act. We didn't know it would be an act. We just wanted regulations that were clear, planned, and that worked for the ecosystem. And so we said, okay, this has to be an act because once something is law, it doesn't matter who is in power. Whoever is in power would have to ensure that the law is implemented in a way that works for the ecosystem. And so that's how we started with a few people. The president had already given an initiative to say he really wants to support entrepreneurship and growth and youth development. And we felt this was a good opportunity to have this act. So we established a Presidential Strategic Advisory Council, that's a mouthful, of different representatives of the ecosystem, from corporates, from donors, from government, from founders, from investors. Different people made up that advisory council. And we had to be a very clear vision. So there was a very clear vision that we wanted this act. We had very clear objectives to create enabling environments, to create local content of support, and also to ensure that we had very clear regulations that everybody could abide by. And so we started off, and we did also want to reinvent the wheel. We figured that there were things that were already done before, things that worked before. So we brought all of those laws, existing laws and policies together. Then we had different town halls and consultation sessions across the geopolitical zones, different focus groups for different types of experts. We called in legal experts to help draft the bill. We formed a secretariat made up of hundreds of volunteers who had their day jobs and were working on the bill at night. And so there was just passion and just togetherness and inclusion and collaboration. We understood what the risks were, even though we had this vision to pass a bill within 6 months. That was the timeline when we created our action plan. We said we wanted to pass the bill in 6 months, but in 6 months, we FEC approved. Then we had National Assembly approve the bill, and then the final assent. But you could see there was so much passion and vision. We understood what the barriers were, we understood what the risks were, and we tried to mitigate it. One of the barriers was, will government be interested because of the different bans that we're seeing and the different companies that they were suing. So the ecosystem was a bit cautious. Will government be very keen to actually pass a law? Because we didn't see government as supportive. But shockingly, as we started to engage government, we could see how interested they were to collaborate. I mean, they had their own sessions or even giving feedback. Minister Pantami, you could see him passionate and giving feedback into what should be in the bill. He endorsed it, different agencies endorsed it. Of course, the presidency, this was driven by the office of the president. And so it's quite interesting to see that journey and to see everybody just working together. I think the big thing with the bill is that everybody worked together with one vision, one passion, and trying as best as possible to mitigate the risk to achieve what we wanted to achieve. And that's what happened. And the acts, Nigeria's startup process, I don't know if you know this, but it's recorded as the best of the different acts on the continent. But there was a study that showed that Nigeria's startup acts, the process of building the bill is actually the best in the country. And so we should be proud of that.
Wow, see me smiling from cheek to cheek. I mean, this entire process and journey should be made into a movie for Nigerians to watch and learn from. Who knows, someone might just grab that idea and make good use of it. I'm glad you actually mentioned earlier on that you had town hall meetings with, players in the sector. I'm wondering, what was that common challenge that everybody had that you think made your team feel, I think it is a good thing that we wanted this to become an act?
It was just the uncertainty, I think, with regulation. So we didn't know if you come up with a great innovation or you're a startup, if government would come up with some policy to license you or to ban you. So there was just this fear and apathy that even startups weren't keen. When you mention government, they don't even want government to know what they're doing. But the idea of regulation is to enable startups, right? The idea of regulation and government is to promote innovation at the same time protecting consumers. Bear in mind, we understood the role that government plays in protecting consumers. So we protect consumers from things like cybersecurity threats and just misuse of tech. So there's a role that government has to play in that, but there's a way we can meet in the middle, right? To ensure that we are doing both without jeopardizing the power of tech in unlocking our economy. So that was one of the big things, uncertainty. And so uncertainty, not just with whether government would be interested in, creating an act, but also even implementation, right? Okay, so yes, we have an act, then what happens next, right? So those were two big things. That you have an act, does it mean that government would listen, or would they not still ban things, right? And so we said, look, it's the same responsibility that we had in encouraging government, in working with government, in understanding the role that government has to play, in government understanding the role of the ecosystem, that made us create this bill. It's the same spirit, what we call the big tent approach. This is our bill that we need to bring to implementation. So you find things in the bill like a council for digital innovation and entrepreneurship, meaning that hopefully it's a council that ensures that before any regulation is passed, a couple of people have sort of agreed to what that regulation is, and it works in the best interest for both the ecosystem, our economy, and also ensuring that we are protecting our consumers as well. So those were the two main issues, and I think we tried to sort of resolve that in the content of the bill, and also with our mindset going forward as we try to implement the act.
Yes, this is amazing, because that was one concern that came to mind when I mentioned to my colleagues in the newsroom that, oh, wow, it is now an act, yay. The next thing they said to douse my happiness was its implementation and sustainability, because we hear Nigeria has fine sets of policies, but implementing those policies, and when implemented, sustaining it, for future generations is actually the issue. But we do hope with the speed, with the concern, with the rate at which this bill became an act, because I want to believe the government is saying that, man, technology is the way to go. I mean, other countries are making use of it, and their startups are becoming multi-billion-dollar rated, what's it called, companies that the rest of the global community are plugging onto. We do hope that one startup in Nigeria, or two or three, can be taken good care of, so they can export what they have to the other world, just the way a whole lot of people are plugging to Google, the Facebooks, and the YouTubes of this world. It's a good thing. It's actually a very good thing. So I know you mentioned setting up some sort of council to take a look at regulation, if I'll paraphrase. But is there any content or section of that bill that really excites you? I mean, if it's one or two that you can mention.
I'm actually excited about that council. I mean, you have other things like incentives to attract foreign capital, to attract more investment, incentives to promote local investing. You have things like the 10 billion naira fund that the government also wants to put in. That shows, commitment and can also attract and boost investor confidence. So there are a couple of interesting things in the bill, but I like the council mainly because of the process of implementation, right? In the UK, for example, they have what they call a plan for digital regulation. And they have that plan. The objective of that plan is to ensure that they have an approach to how they regulate tech. So that council for me is very vital in ensuring accountability, ensuring transparency, and ensuring that this is not just another document, that this is a document that can actually become a living document that can be translated from paper to action. So it constitutes the president's, the vice president's office, a couple of key MDAs like the CBN, SEC, FIRS, key MDAs that affect the life cycle of the tech-enabled startup, as well as members of the private sector in that council. So if it's well driven and they meet regularly, they have the opportunity to really ensure that regulation truly promotes and enables the ecosystem. So I like it because of accountability and implementation, because when it comes to regulation and policy, implementation is always a big challenge.
It is. And we hope it's going to change for the better, because we can't keep, doing the same thing and expecting an absolutely different result. Thank you so much for joining us, Adaeze.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
One of the other things we would see is that people would have more faith in tech companies.
Tech Hub for a smarter you.